Hello, my name is Zoran Kirnic. I work in primary school Glina in Glina, Croatia. Today, I am going to give you some basic information about the webinar we created within Erasmus Plus K2 strategic partnership called WIMI. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you. In Work Package 4 of WIMI project, we created a webinar called How to Include Disadvantaged Students in Taking Action on Climate Change. At the beginning, we prepared an icebreaker activity called the Name Game. In the icebreaker activity, participants stand in a circle and a facilitator starts by saying their name, followed by an adjective that begins with the same letter as their name. For example, Creative Carol. The next person repeats the previous name and then adds their own. This is a very good activity, especially if the participants of the webinar don't know each other very well. We start this webinar with a sentence by Dr. Jane Goodall, scientist and activist, that says, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." This statement is very important, especially as we know that the topic of this seminar are disadvantaged students. The thing is that in our schools, we have a lot of disadvantaged students, and it's really up to us, the teachers, to what extent are we going to make a difference and help them alleviate the learning process. At the beginning of the webinar, we set some basic objectives. Identifying barriers to participation for disadvantaged students, creating safe spaces for dialogue and expression on climate issues, providing accessible resources and materials for all students, tailoring engagement strategies to diverse backgrounds and experiences, community partnerships, collaborating with local organizations for support, and utilizing mentorship programs to empower underrepresented students. This webinar has 4 parts, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them. Part 1 is titled Participation of Disadvantaged Students and Creating Safe Spaces for Dialogue and Expression on Climate Issues. We start this webinar with explaining why climate change education is important and why is it important to include it in educational systems around the world as a key component of the work we do for sustainable development. In 2019, Croatian Ministry of Education introduced sustainable development as one of 7 important cross-curricular themes within the national curriculum. We believe that talking about sustainable development and climate change is very important, especially with the students from an early age, and we also believe that most of the national curriculums in European schools has sustainable development and climate change as one of very important topics. Also, we find that talking about climate change, it's not only related to STEM subjects, but that we need to incorporate this very important topic in all subjects taught at school. When we talk about disadvantaged students, we need to say that they have a learning problem or disability that make it more difficult for them to learn than most children their age. They may have problems with schoolwork, communication, behavior, or they live in socio-economically unfavorable conditions. One thing that is very important for disadvantaged students is to develop the following key competences: self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and maybe the most important one, social skills. Also, one thing that is very important for disadvantaged students is creating an environment conducive to learning. The role of the teacher is to create and select a suitable learning environment and guide students through the learning process. One thing that is related to disadvantaged students is metacognition. When we talk about metacognition, we can say that it represents the process that can be best described as thinking about one's thinking and how to manage it. We can also say that metacognition is awareness of what we know, what we can, what we do, what we feel, and what we want. To explain the metacognition to webinar participants, there is a video that guides them step by step on how metacognition works, so facilitators can show and later discuss the video with the participants. Also, what we offer here are 4 strategies for teaching about climate change, especially when we work with disadvantaged students. They are: focus on both problems and solutions, connect climate change to your existing curriculum, connect global issues to the local ones, and lean on simulation and games because they can help disadvantaged students a lot within the learning process. Also, at the end of this part 1, facilitators can give participants an opportunity to brainstorm some simulations and games that can help disadvantaged students, but all students also when talking about climate change. Part 2 of the webinar is titled Strategies, Resources, and Materials to Engage Disadvantaged Students to Take Action on Climate Change. In this part, we want to focus on climate-friendly schools. When we talk about climate-friendly schools, what makes them different is the thing that they live what they learn and they learn what they live. There is the whole school approach to climate change, which is very different from what normal schools have. Also, there is a video that shows a good example of practices within the climate-friendly schools, so the facilitators can show the video to the participants and later discuss what they've seen. Also, within the schools, they have climate action team, and that team at the beginning makes a plan, then they take action, and at the end they reflect and review everything done related to the climate change topic. Also, participants who work in that kind of schools, they have special roles. So all the participants, all the people working at the schools, they know what exactly needs to be done to take action on climate change. So the possible roles are principals and administrators, teachers, students, custodians and building operators, cafeteria staff, families, local community members and organizations. And what we offer here are also some teaching resources and materials that facilitators can check and present them to the webinar participants, and of course discuss them and see what teaching resources and materials they can use in their classrooms. Part 3 of the webinar is titled Community Partnerships, Collaborating with Local Organizations for Support. Community partnership is very important, especially when we are talking about disadvantaged students, because they bring together diverse perspectives, expertise, and resources to tackle complex sustainability changes that no single entity can solve alone. What we usually do is make partnership with different NGOs that exist in every local community, because we find very important collaboration with NGOs, as they have much more expertise in different areas that can help us, especially with disadvantaged students. In this part, we offer strategies for maximizing the effectiveness of collaborative partnerships, which are: establish clear goals and objectives, build trust and relationships, promote diversity and inclusion, facilitate effective communication, establish clear goals and objectives, build trust and relationships. Also, promote diversity and inclusion and facilitate effective communication. Embrace shared leadership and governance. Leverage complementary resources and expertise. Also, they need to foster innovation and learning and ensure accountability and evaluation. Creating student NGO partnership for climate solutions is something that can be easily done, because teachers can prepare them. But if we want to have a good student NGO partnership, there are some steps we need to take. At the beginning, the most important thing is to talk to your class, discuss your student interest, and find out how they wish to engage in climate-related topic. Then, what you need to do is frame your class participation in climate action. Step number 3 is find a suitable NGO as a partner. And the last thing, and maybe the most important one, is always think local, act local. Because nowadays it is very hard that we are going to solve some problems on the world or European or even country basis. What we can do and what we need to do is to solve problems on our local, in our local communities. And this is something that is really going to show effect. Also, what we need to think about are the narratives that we present to our students. When we are working on the project, it's always good to start small, and what we need to remember that the project needs to be as focused as possible. At the end, we are offering some good examples of community partnership projects, so the facilitator can show them to the participants, you can discuss about them, and there is always a possibility to have an activity where participants can brainstorm and suggest some interesting activity related to their school or their local community. Part 4 is titled Utilizing Mentorship Programs to Empower Underrepresented Students. At the beginning, we can explain to the participants what a mentorship program is. Also, there are some steps that we need to follow to make it successful. These steps are planning and preparation at the beginning, then careful matching of mentors and mentees, prioritization of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, leadership, buy-in and support, and tracking progress and measuring outcomes. The question that we need to ask ourselves is why to start a mentoring program. Mentoring programs offer benefits for students who actively participate in them, gaining valuable insight into their strengths, weaknesses, and areas for growth, enhancing their overall effectiveness and confidence. Also, we need to think how to start a successful mentoring program. To do so, there is a guide video that facilitators can show to the participants, explaining step by step how to do it. Also, if we want to mentor students, there are some things we need to have in mind. First of all, be flexible. Then, maintain clear and consistent communication. Track student progress. Create strong connections. And what we are offering are 20 tips for mentoring underrepresented students. Facilitators can show to the participants the 20 tips, and then you can discuss them and to see with the participants what they think about them. At the end, we also offer some mentorship programs on climate change that you can check and give good examples, good practice examples to the participants who are willing to start a mentorship program within their school or with their students. This is the end of the seminar. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What I would like to say at the end is that WIMI partnership is a three-year long partnership. And in that 3-year period, we created a lot of teaching materials that can be very useful for teachers or different educational professionals who want to work with students on the climate change topic. If you want to use any of the materials created, you can visit our webpage at www.wimiproject.eu. The webpage is sort of online platform that offers different materials in several languages. So all the teachers or educational professionals who want can use these materials to work with their students. At the end, the message that we want to send with this project is that climate change is here and it's happening now. So we feel that it's the time that we need to work on that so we can see the effects in the future. And to do so, the best thing is to start working with young people, our students, so that they, from an early age, start to think about the climate change and all the effects that it has on our lives now, and to even make it less in the future. Thank you for watching and goodbye.